And we are live. You can catch us on Twitch, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And we'll be right back with you, Howlers.
Ow!
How's over Baz? I'm Jacob Casas.
I'm Jessica Q.
And today we have, well, summer is back. Not the season, the person. But we I want to open up a little bit with, we had her on the show before. So I want you to explain a little bit, Summer, because we have a lot more audience now.
Awesome.
We hit 25, almost, we're about to 300 away from 25,000 subscribers. We have over 300,000 viewers. So it keeps picking up, but I would like you just to go ahead and let people know who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me on the program. My name is Dr. Summer DeRuiter, and my business is DeRuiter R&D. And what I do is business development through grant writing. And what that means is I'm a grant writer, but I also help you if you have a startup business or a business that wants to have a new plan and a new direction. I actually use grants to help you organize that plan, whether it's a business plan or a project plan. And that way, even if you don't receive the grant, and that is a possibility, even with the best grant writer, only about 10 to 30% of grants are funded. But with my business, you never leave empty-handed because you at least leave with a plan, which then you can take to other investors, you can take to a bank for a loan, and you can just keep that business plan and keep moving your business forward.
Nice.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
So we're doing something a little different today. Not just today. We're gonna keep this whole process going. So me and Jessica are looking to get a grant for a nonprofit that we are building right now, and we want to live stream the whole process for you guys to see. I haven't seen this done before, so I think it's great knowledge for people to understand even the good to the bad of us struggling to get the grant, to show the whole process of how this is done so that people can see it being done. So today is the first process of us going through this with Summer. So you're going to see a lot of things that, might not make sense at the beginning, but as we go through, you're going to see, the process of this whole situation. So, do you want to start out a little bit of what we're doing?
Yeah. So I'm sure you guys have seen me on the show before. I'm Jessica Katawi, and I was running for mayor. Unfortunately, I did not win my race, but it's okay. I did very well for being my first time, coming into politics, and going up against the incumbent. But I did amazing. And so now I decided, you know what? I'm not going to give up on my dreams of helping my community and making a difference. And one of the biggest issues is the homeless issue in our city. So I started talking to Jacob. I said, you know what? It doesn't have to end here. It doesn't have to stop here. Just because I didn't win doesn't mean that I can't, actually get out there and do something. And so we decided that, you know what, we're going to go ahead and move forward and start a nonprofit. So this is literally the beginning. Mm-hmm. This is it. We're sitting here with you, Summer. We're going to talk to you, figure out what we need to do, and hopefully teach everybody else out there that maybe has been thinking about trying to start a nonprofit how to go about it and how to get grants and yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and this is how I start the process when I work with any business. I love to just sit across the table from the person who wants to get a grant or people who want to get a grant, and I ask them, tell me about your business, tell me why you're passionate about it, tell me what your goal is. And then I usually ask, what is your 1-year plan? What is your 5-year plan? And what is your 10-year plan? And a lot of businesses haven't thought that far ahead, but I like getting people started thinking, where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Because the first thing you need to know about grants is they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And the amount of money it takes to get the grant written depends on really the amount of money that you want to receive. And not because I charge proportionally for the size of the grant, I actually just charge a flat rate by the hour. I actually give nonprofits a deep discount, and if people want to contact me, I can tell them what that is.
Okay.
But it's because when you ask for more money, the grantor, the person providing the grant, usually asks for more information. So there are really easy grants. There are some grants that I'll tell you about today where it's almost like a lottery. You just put your name and a little bit of information, and if you are picked out of the hat, you get the grant. So there are some that are really easy like that, but those are usually for less than $1,000. Then you get up into the $10,000. That usually takes you a day or so to write those. If you get to the $100,000 level, that usually takes you at least a week to write. The biggest grant I've ever been a part of writing, I was actually a consultant working for another consulting company, working with two other consulting companies, and all three of these consulting companies worked together to write two $270 million DOE grants. And that was actually to build a whole carbon capture and storage industrial-sized plants, and that's why the grant was so large.
And this was not nonprofit. You said this is like
No, this was definitely a for-profit grant.
Okay, for profit. Okay.
I don't know what the biggest nonprofit grant is that I've ever seen, and most of the time nonprofit grants are smaller. But I will say that is changing with the current Biden administration, because the Biden administration wants to get money to communities, especially disadvantaged communities. So when you're talking about helping the homeless, you can't find a more disadvantaged community than that. The homeless are people that have literally fallen through all the cracks in our society. But all we need to do to not have that happen is have a few good nonprofits come together, coordinate, and fix the problem. Because homelessness is a human problem. It's something I'm actually very interested in myself. After we get done talking about your idea to help the homeless, we can talk about my dream, which is to create the type of housing community that heals people. Because when you've been left behind by society, that hurts you in a way that it takes some time to heal before you can fully reintegrate back into that society.
Right.
So I would love to talk to you about that too.
Yes.
That's actually a part of the process that she wanted
My
to do
plan.
with the grant.
Mine's a two-part plan. Yeah, and I've actually discussed a little bit of it on the show before
Very cool.
the election ended. Yeah, but yes, I agree, because they got there. You know, they've been through pain and suffering, right, to get to the point where they're at. So part of my plan is getting them off the streets, because right now, I don't know what city you live in, but this is Riverside, and you know, there's just homeless people everywhere, unhoused, right? And they don't want to go to any of the shelters because they're limited on what they can do. They're restricted, right? So
Right. It almost starts feeling like a jail.
Exactly.
Or you're in a very strict mom's house and they're watching you all the time. And who wants that kind of life?
exactly, and that's why there's so many open beds in the city of Riverside, and way more unhoused on the streets, just sleeping on the streets because they'd rather be there. And I went around and I interviewed some of the unhoused people, and there was this one gentleman. He only spoke Spanish, and he was 76 years old, and he basically told me that he lost the love of his life, and 30 years ago, and ever since then he's been living on the streets. And I asked him, I said, there's places for you to go. Why don't you go? And he basically said, well, they won't let me bring my cerveza, my beer. So because they won't let him bring his beer, he does not want to accept the bed. So now there's all these, places that are just practically empty. And so my idea is to create a place that they can go that isn't restricted. And obviously, you gotta be careful with that too, right? At the same time, because we've got the river bottom and it's kind of crazy. So I do want to work with, the police to also have a special, force that kind of is around there, and or like a, type of security that's just making sure they understand, like, hey, you can do whatever you want, that's your space, your area, but you still, you can't do anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's always a balance when you have a society between personal freedom and living in a social system. We all give up a little bit of what we might want to do in order to live with neighbors. And so it's about finding that balance where people can live with dignity, self-respect, and also develop community bonds.
Community bonds, yes. And then going to that's part 2, where right outside of this establishment, where they can stay and live and set up their tents, or if they have an RV, they'll have a space to park their RVs. But right outside, we'll have a campus, and this campus will have different areas, trailers, whatever it is, rooms they can go into to get therapy, counseling, guidance on maybe how to get a job, workshops.
I tell you, we were talking about being psychic before. You've been reading my mind. We've got
a
workshop.
We matched, right, Casey?
Yeah.
We were meant to meet.
Yeah, exactly.
It might turn into a partnership. Who knows?
I didn't wear my red lipstick though, darn.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to mention is there's a group that's all that I just met, and talk about serendipity and whatever. I was just talking with another possible grant client who they have a solar business, but they're actually out here in Fontana helping the Water of Life Church, and they are housing the homeless at the Water of Life Church, and they're developing. They do home flipping, so they take abandoned homes and they have a construction crew and they flip them and they get people rehoused. So I just met them last week, and so we've got to get you and them and all of us together, and keep talking about this, because I really do feel like this taking care of homeless people isn't something that's nice to do. It's not charity. It's not philanthropy. This is just being human. It's just being human, because all of us, when we drive by, at least I hope most of us, when we drive by people who are in those kind of dire straits, it hurts our heart. We have a pull and a feeling like it should not be this way. And, as a societies in general, this is just a practical thing. If you have too many people who don't have their basic needs met, it can be destabilizing for a whole society. Talk about the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Maoist Revolution. What did all of those things have in common? There were very few in the society that took most of it, took most of the goods of society, and everybody else was left wanting. This is just a practical thing. We have to rebalance, and it's a solvable problem. It's a very solvable problem, and there are so many.
Have you ever heard of the homeless? Hold on, it's the homeless complex. Oh my gosh, what is it called? There's a whole video on YouTube about it, and it's about how our government, our local cities, our state makes money off the homeless, and that's why they do not want to stop. They don't want it to end, and it's going to take strong individuals to actually step up, and like you said, it's solvable. But it might be a little bit of a fight.
Yeah, it's going to be a fight, because the cities want homeless because they make money off of them.
Yeah, I haven't seen that program, and I don't understand how that could work. But I just know that this is a solvable problem, and if you have enough smart minds and wolf-like personalities
Yes.
leading the charge, then we can all become one pack again. You know,
Exactly.
the other
Yes.
thing that I
I love
just
that.
was reintroduced to is my favorite book, and it reminds me of you guys. It's by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She's a PhD Jungian psychologist, and her book is Women Who Run with the Wolves, and
So,
it talks about female wolves as not being feral, not being vicious creatures, but being nurturing creatures, and that the wolf pack itself is a nurturing system. And when the whole pack is healthy, then every member of that pack does better. But when you try to cage them, when you put them in an unnatural environment, when you take away something that they vitally need, that's the time when wolves become dangerous, or
Vicious.
when they're without their pack. So, I like your howls over Baz because it's the idea that, a wolf pack is a place of safety as well as the idea of the strength of the wolf pack. It's also the idea of the safety from the social system. And humans are a social creature. My PhD is in evolutionary biology, so I like to think of human beings in terms of where did we come from and what did we spend the most time being. What humans have spent the most time as is small, tight-knit social groups that relied on each other. Most of our time in development was hunter-gatherers. We all needed each other for some part of our survival. You find the berries, you capture the deer, you dig up the roots, and all of those people would go out and do their thing, and then they would come back together and they would eat together. They would sleep, very close together, and even at night you had safety because you had the group. And that was where we spent most of our time. And now we've taken this species that's meant to be in close-knit community groups for their whole life, and we've pulled each other apart, and we've spread each other to the far winds. Families, communities, we move so often and so much. We are not forming those bonds as much anymore. We're not reliant on each other for some part of our survival, so we feel something's missing. And it's actually my hypothesis that that's why you have mental health problems. That's why you have addiction problems. We all feel a gaping hole in our soul, and we feel like we need to stuff something in it. Mm-hmm. But the things that fill that hole quickly are usually the things that are not good for us.
Yes.
So that's my
That
underlying
was so deep.
thesis.
I love that.
yeah, I love that. I really like how you put that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's fix it.
Yeah.
Let's get your nonprofit some money. So
Yes.
all deep stuff aside, if you want to get funding for a nonprofit, the first thing you do is you define your goals. Mm-hmm. So it already seems like you have some well-defined goals. You want to create a safe place where people can have autonomy still, not too many rules, but not so few that you have anarchy, and a place where there are places everybody can go of their own volition and find the help that they need.
Like rehabilitation, exactly.
And find a way to heal, and if they want to reintegrate in society. And that's a big question too, because people have a wide range of a pull to be social. There are some people who are extremely social, and there are other people that they don't want to be around other people all that much. They want to mostly have places to themselves. And so helping people find that balance where they can have all the benefits of society, but not have to conform as much. Because I have a feeling that some people that choose a different life, not that a lot of them choose it, but, you know, the idea of personal freedom is really important. And helping each person find that balance between how much freedom do I want, how much support from society do I want.
Right.
And that's the, you know, like I said, that's the question we all ask ourselves on a day-to-day basis. I don't like wearing clothes, but I have to put them on before I go outside because otherwise the neighbors complain.
Yeah.
Little things like that we all have to do on a
Some
daily
neighbors
basis.
don't mind, I don't think. No, I'm just kidding.
You never know. Depends on the person, depends on the neighbors. And so, but yeah, so you when you're wanting to find funding for nonprofit, for-profit, you define your goals first, and then you define how fast you want to get there. Okay,
I have a question now. I'm like raising my hand. I'm going to start raising my hand.
Ahead.
Okay, so I want to focus on the local community with the homeless situation. However, I also love to do work, like nonprofit work, I guess, or like mission work around the world. I've traveled the world, and I've rescued people from the ocean that were refugees, and so I really put myself out there. And the first time I ever did it, I was so scared. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but my heart was not going to let me stop, and I did it, and it was the most, it was an amazing experience because it taught me so much. It changed my life. That was like the moment, pulling children out of a raft out of the ocean in Greece. And, it was, it just makes you appreciate your life, what you have, so much more. And it changed me. But I want to be able to do a little bit of everything. Now, when you say define, plan, and goals, does it have to be, do I have to say, I'm going to work with the homeless locally? Or can I say, I'm going to support anybody that is in need in the world?
Well, I think it's good to focus on one thing at a time.
Okay.
But that's why I ask about the 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year plan. I can see the 1 to 5 year plan, including getting a really good model set up here in America, tested, tried, trial and error. Anytime you try something new, you have to just wrap failure in as part of the sauce.
Okay.
And then you see what fails, and then you try something new, and then you adjust. I call it the Edison method. Edison said, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways to make a light bulb that don't work. And I think anytime you're starting a new business, if you are too afraid of failure, you are going to fail. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you just have to take a deep breath at the beginning and say, failure is going to be part of this process. I'm going to bake it in. I'm going to watch for something to fail. And then when it does, I see what went wrong, make a note of it, and then try something new and see how it goes from there. So 1 to 5 year plan local, get the system solid, get it strong. That's the thing about Edison's light bulb. If he would have quit even after the first 10 or 100 failures, he would have had a light bulb, but it would have probably broken a lot sooner. It wouldn't have been as strong and as resilient. So that's another thing that each business has to define is how much are we going to troubleshoot in the initial setup, and then when is the proper time to launch? How good does my product, service, system need to be before I go from setup to launch? And I think that it usually should be somewhere in between that 1 to 5 year time period, but it also depends on each individual's ability to raise money, the funds you had to start with, how expensive it is to maintain the system while you're troubleshooting it, and on from there. So I would say 1 to 5 years, set up and troubleshoot, and then the 5 to 10 year plan is let's take this international. Because this is a problem. Homelessness is a problem that every city wants to solve. Whether or not the current system makes money off of the way things currently are. I mean, everybody usually finds a way to make money off of the way things are. But if it's creating massive human suffering, then it doesn't matter if you're making money off of it or who's making money off of it. This is a problem.
Yeah.
It needs to be solved. So, and that's what happens throughout human society. Everybody gets used to the way things are. People get complacent. People say, well, nothing really needs to change. But then there's people over here saying, hello, I'm not eating.
Yeah.
I have no place to sleep. I think things need to change. And so, but there's always pushback. And the amazing thing in the time we're living in right now is we're living in the time of exponential technologies. We've connected the world with the internet. We've got all of our information shared. So innovation is happening faster and faster. So things to solve problems and ways of solving problems are being churned out more and more by the minute. And that's the exponential part of it. Innovation used to go along very slowly because, if you wanted to find out what the newest information was, you had to leave your place in Greece and you had to travel across the Mediterranean Sea and go to Alexandria and, before the Dewey Decimal System, and I guess dig through all the scrolls till you found what the newest information was. So you can kind of see how, in the beginning, information was flowing very slowly, and then invading armies had an irritating tendency of burning libraries because knowledge is where the power is. A lot of people say money is power, but you don't get the money if you don't have the knowledge. So, technology moves forward, but this is the thing we're dealing with at this time. Technology is moving forward so fast, it's moving faster than our speed of our society, it's moving faster than the speed of our ethics, and we're just turning to keep up.
Faster than the speed of our ethics. That's real. Right?
Ethics always plays catch up. Our technology, whether it's oil, people act like, oh, these wind turbines are knocking birds out of the air. They act like it's the first time new technology has caused any problems.
Yeah.
How many people died in coal mines when coal was the big thing? How many people died on, getting the first oil rigs set up or on offshore oil rigs and all that,
building the railroad,
building the railroads. All new technology charges ahead, then we get safety features in, then we figure out how to ethically use it. And usually, unfortunately, that's last. A lot of people are trying with biotechnology, with genetic engineering, with AI, machine learning, all that together. People are trying to get ahead of it now. I think this is the first stage where we're really trying to put the ethics out first before the technology gets away from us. We'll see how successful we are at it. So that was a long answer to your question. So what's the next step? What do you want to do?
So you said
next?
Define our plan and goals, and then what do we do after that? Where do we go from there?
So then you go to the grant search engines. And there are a lot of them that are online that are free, that if you want to search for your own grants, you can. Grants.gov is a big one, but problem with grants.gov, it's a big one. Every grant that the federal government handles is in there. So you put in something like homeless, rehousing, solving the homeless issue. You put that in the search engine, you might get 2,000 different grants. And if you don't check the right boxes, some of them will be expired. You can't even get those anymore. They just exist in the system for historical reasons or because they might bring them back in future years, but it's gone now. And that sort of thing. So it's a massive search engine.
And that's why somebody would hire you to come in.
Yeah.
Because you know exactly what to look for. You can expedite the process.
Yeah, and the way I do the grant writing, the grant finding process is we start small. Because I think that's
explain this. I like. Okay, so this right here is a big deal right here. This is what she explained to me the last time she was on the show, And I really like how you explain this, and it makes sense to me. And it's almost like small steps, anyways, but it makes sense if you want to explain that.
Yeah, so when you're just starting a business, when you're just starting a new plan, it's all in development. So taking a plan that's still in development and going for one of these big grants that ask for so many details, so much information, that takes so much time and costs so much money if you have a grant writer write them. Instead, I often recommend that businesses start with small grants, and usually the smaller grants that are most available to members of the community are community-based grants. There are often city grants or county grants, especially for aspirational things. That's the other sort of general thing people need to know about grants, is almost all grants are aspirational. And what I mean by that is the people who are providing the money want something done. They have a goal in mind themselves, and you will not be successful getting that grant unless you can make what your company does align with the goals of the grant. So right now, it's an amazing time because through the Biden infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, massive amounts of money are being sent out into the communities, but there's also the Justice 40 section, which says that 40% of that grant effort, grant money, some sort of outcome of the grant needs to go to disadvantaged communities. And there's a new thing in all of these, at least the Department of Energy grants that I'm working on, called a community benefits plan. You have to say how your business is going to work with the community. You have to say how you're going to bring people who have not been in the job market. How are you going to get them job training? How are you going to do workforce training? How are you going to incorporate unions? And how are you going to incorporate people who have been left out of the system historically? And that's something that's brand new, that's never been a part of the grant process before, but it's a way that people who have been left out of the grant process before can be incorporated back in. So that's the big aspiration that I think the Biden administration should be shouting from the rooftops. There's this whole movement, you might call it the populist movement, where people are saying we've been left behind. Well, this grant process, the whole grant process, is to bring people into federal money who have been left behind before. And, it's brand new, and it's a creation of this administration, and I think they should be shouting it from the rooftops.
That's crazy. I mean, this is something we talk about in the podcast a lot too. Is a lot of people don't always agree. Who's president and what they're doing, and you might not be able to stand the person, but if you really look and try to figure out the best angle for you, the business that you have or what you're trying to do or put on, you can find holes in those places where you can benefit from that. And that's one.
Absolutely.
Right there. That's crazy. I would have no idea that was something. So basically, for the time that we're trying to do this right now, that is something that we can benefit from.
I think absolutely. I think, and the thing about the bigger grants is you often need to form coalitions, but you want to do something big. You want to help a whole city. Mm-hmm. So forming a coalition with the city or with the county, or if you found that those structures haven't worked with you before, these community benefits plans often talk about bring faith-based organizations in. The separation of church and state doesn't apply to these grants. Churches, faith-based organizations, any sort of community benefit organization, if you brought a coalition of them together, you could create a funnel for some of these community benefits plans. It's something that I'm actually trying to do with a group that I've been talking with in D.C., because when I wrote these massive $270 million grants, because the community benefits plans were new, the corporations didn't quite know how to introduce themselves to the community. And this is something that now that it's required, it's a need that needs to be filled. If if corporations want to build a new project in a community that they're not a part of yet, then who's going to introduce them to the community? Who are the trusted members of that community that can say, yes, if you want to bring your corporate project here, here's the people you can help. Here's the organizations that are already trusted members of this community.
Like the church we went to that day.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, she ran for mayor, so she already has a name out there. She got 20% of the votes. So she did.
It went up to 23%.
23%.
Awesome.
So she still,
It kept going.
Precision is important.
Yeah. And she still has people for her. So it would be great if I would believe that to still go after that city.
Yeah.
Because
I was going to ask you, what would you recommend, or when you apply for a grant, does it necessarily have to be in the city that you're based out of? Does it have to come from?
Oh, yeah. No, let me stay on track. I have a tendency to get distracted with the big ideas. But so the way I usually go after grants is when we're first starting out, let's see what the local grants are. Do we have any city or state grants that are available? Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. So city or county first, then state. Because as you build out from your local area, you're going to have more competition. As you go to higher and higher levels of government, the process is probably going to get more complicated. Now, I have to give the state of California major kudos because their grant system, their grant portal, really easy. It's just keyword based. It's very precise. It pulls up pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. And the grant writing process of California is very clear cut, and you know exactly what you're being graded on. So I think California has done a great job of making their grants as accessible as possible. It's just grants.ca.gov. So if you want to go for state grants, it's a pretty simple process. And the federal grant process is getting easier too. Now the grants.gov has a thing called Workspace, which is actually a virtual space where you and every other member of your group can go to the exact same documents and you can work on them at the same time. Not the exact same document at the exact same time. When one person has it open, it'll show locked to the other people. But then when you're done with it, you unlock it, and then everybody else in your group can access it. So you can have people working on the grant all in one space. And it makes it much easier than trying to email stuff back and forth between your group members or trying to get a hold of them at the exact moment that you need them and that sort of thing. So the grant system itself is evolving as well, and that's nice to see because I still remember when we had to make 6 copies of the paper version, and if you did anything wrong, there was no editing it after you had printed it out. You just had to send it in however you had finalized it. So start local, less competition, and the local system usually has, because you're a member of that community, they want to give a local person that money because you have community ties.
The mayor doesn't have any say in who the grants go to, right? Because I don't think our current mayor is going to give me any grants if that was the case.
Usually not, because grants hopefully are unbiased. But you also don't want to. You don't have to limit yourself just to government-based grants. There's a huge amount of philanthropy out there that's trying to solve this problem already. And, some people want to be boots on the ground and want to be solving it with their own 2 hands. Some people just want to say, hey, I made all this money in the dot-com boom, or I made all this money, doing this thing, and now I want to give back. So there's the philanthropic side of things. So
do you also help with that?
Those finding philanthropic dollars. Yeah, it's all become much more automated.
I wanted you to meet her so bad, and now I'm so glad.
Absolutely, I think we both have a passion for solving these problems in a similar way. So I'm very glad we met too.
Connected. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm excited to. move forward with this. And now I had some questions because I already started doing some research, Googling how to start a nonprofit, the steps, and there's a lot of different, like the 501c3,
yeah.
and then there was a 501c4, and so one of them stood out to me because it said it's a nonprofit. However, you are able to endorse a political, or like in politics, you could endorse a candidate. Now, let's say maybe I decide to run again. I would want my nonprofit to endorse me because I'm on the board, or however,
Yeah.
I'm still learning all this. It's all new to me, but as soon as I get it down, it'll be like, embedded in my head. But what do you suggest that, we create the nonprofit? Should it be a 501c3 or the 501c4? Or are you not too familiar with all that?
I'm not actually that familiar with the process because I've never investigated that because I haven't started my own nonprofit. That might change in the future because, like I said, I've got similar dreams to set up communities that are more human communities in general, and healing spaces for people. But the one I'm most familiar with, and the one that the government seems the most familiar with, because I just see 501c3 on most everything when they're talking about nonprofits. So I don't know if there's a downside to creating a nonprofit that has a name that people usually don't hear of. So there's pluses and minuses to conformity in every respect. But 501c3 is what's written on many of the grants that are talking about nonprofits. And you do want to get that because you have to have the 501c3 for most, at least federal, state, and government grants, because they want to be able to track the money. That's what it is. So if you don't have that 501c3, it's harder to track the money if you don't have that, tax exempt but tracked status.
Okay. I met a lady at an event. It was like excellence awards at the Doubletree Hotel in Ontario.
Nice.
I don't know if you heard about it, but it was a big event, and they had a lot of local leaders there. And there was this one lady that spoke, and she actually helps people start nonprofits. And so I've been trying so hard to find her and get a hold of her. So I'm going to work on getting a hold of her because I think she might be able to guide me when it comes to that, to make the right decision. Because, like you said, I want to make sure that the foundation of this is just solid and
absolutely. And
it makes
most
sense.
of the time you can change these things, but it involves headaches. So if you make the right decision the first time, then you don't have to
go through a
change.
failure.
You don't have to. When failures will happen, but if you can prevent some of them from happening,
why not?
Not so much of a learning curve, because there's so much to learn when you're starting a new business anyway. The stuff you can figure out ahead of time and make it easier on yourself. It's better. So we've talked about setting initial goals. We've talked about the way to pursue grants to kind of build your business as you go for larger and larger grants. And you're also, you can kind of think of this along the timeline too. You start in your first year with local and county level grants, then your second year maybe go for a state level grant, third, fourth year maybe a federal grant, or you go to larger and larger philanthropic organizations. And each time you get a grant, you're really establishing your bona fides. And so that rule of those who have get applies to the grant world too. So when you start getting grants, you start getting known for being reliable with that grant money, then getting the next grant becomes easier, and getting the next grant becomes easier. When I was going through this SBIR, STTR process, this process for innovation in small business through the DOE, I was working with a technical advisor, and this is someone who had helped hundreds of companies through this same process. And he said basically that, once you learn how to write your grant well and you get in the door, then you can just keep replicating that process. And the more grants you get and you use wisely and you use it the way the grantor wants to, the more you establish yourself as a reliable grantee. And so those things get around to the grantor community, and that's just part of your business resume then. We received this grant, and this grant. We did X, Y, and Z with it. You start establishing that you can be relied on to use grant and philanthropic money wisely.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on something she told us last time. She was saying, like, if we go after the big grants, we usually have to match like half of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes a problem. It's like, okay, like the 300.
So you also have to build up your.
But is it 50-50? Because I know one of the things while I was running for mayor is I learned that our mayor brought in $300 million to our city. However, for every 10 million, it was like 2 million had to be spent by the city. So, but they don't mention that. They don't usually talk about that. But of course,
that is not anything wrong. There is overhead worked into just about any large grant because you need that overhead money if you're paying more than one person to manage the money.
Okay.
So the larger your institution gets, so like university grants, the university takes a third chunk of any grant a professor gets, and that goes to keeping the university going. Because any professor that works in the university, they need the buildings, they need the water to flow. If they're a scientist, they need chemicals and things like that. And, you need to pay the students and all that. So anytime the larger your organization gets, the more you have to keep back for overhead. I mean, even nonprofits. I mean, a lot of times people decide who they're going to donate to, and they donate to the nonprofit that uses most of their money to do the thing that they are saying they're going to do. And that's a good measure, but it can also starve a nonprofit to death if you try to put all of your money into the good thing you're doing and you don't save any of your money for just keeping your business running, your nonprofit business running, paying people, keeping supplies stocked and that sort of thing. Then your nonprofit's going to fail and all the good you were going to do gets lost. So overhead expands the larger the system you're trying to take care of. So with the city, you're trying to take care of a massive system. Now, the political argument of how big is too big of a government for a government system to be, that's a different argument altogether. But a city can't run without some amount of overhead, some amount of money that it brings in being used just to keep the gears turning.
Yeah. Understandable.
So, and it's the,
even nonprofits still have to put in money.
Oh,
like to get the grants.
Yeah. So
Basically.
and nonprofits do have sort of a special place. So sometimes it depends. So with the large DOE grants, almost all of the biggest grants, the over $1 million grants, have some sort of cost share. And the logic behind it, I think, kind of goes like this. If we're going to give you $1 million to do something, then it's probably a really large project. And if you're just using our money, are you going to be as careful with it and really focus on doing that project well, or are you going to focus on doing that project even more if your own money could be lost in it?
Invested,
because the government wants you to have some personal buy-in if they're going to put their massive amount of money in. If it was just all their money, then, it's happened in the past. Government money just goes away. So cost share is sort of one of those guarantees that you have skin in the game. So you have a personal interest in making that project successful the way the government wants it to be successful because your money's going in too.
And you said that's for the larger grants.
That's usually for the larger grants. You usually don't see cost share invoked till you get over the $100,000 level.
What is that called again?
Cost share.
Cost share and okay.
Yeah. So now philanthropic organizations, I think, are different. I think philanthropic organizations usually just say, we're going to give this amount of money, and we want to see this done. I haven't seen cost share brought in with a philanthropic grant. Now, I haven't seen all of them yet. But the cost share idea is usually with government grants.
And I remember you saying too that a lot of times, if you already got someone that's like when last time you were here, you're saying, let's say we are going for $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. We can still raise that other $1 million, and it might be easier because they're seeing that we might be able to get that $1 million grant. I remember you talking about that last time. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
So you're talking about proving to the government that you already have support behind your business, and the government wants to see that. Maybe not always in terms of money. If you let's say you want to do this homeless endeavor, and to do the homeless endeavor, you start talking to all these community benefit organizations that have already been doing it, and you form an alliance with them, and you talk with them about it, and they start seeing these other organizations that have already done it, who have already established their reputation, say, yeah, I think this new way you're doing it is a good way. They can write you a letter of support, or if they want to collaborate with you, they would write you a letter that's called a Memorandum of Understanding. Those are usually
Memorandum of Understanding.
Those are usually the first letters that you put together when you're putting together partnerships to go in together on a grant. Those Memorandum of Understanding show that this group is committed to helping with this grant effort. Now, how legally binding those Memorandum of Understanding are, that's usually like the gentlest level of legally binding documents. Yeah. It just basically says, we have agreed that we're going to figure out how to work together on this grant.
Yeah.
It's not a
binding contract. It's not a contract. Like if they want to pull out, they don't have to help, right?
You just have to give written notice if you've decided it's not for you. You just provide written notice, and almost all Memorandum of Understanding have that kind of clause. Now you hope someone doesn't give you a Memorandum of Understanding and then fly the coop. But it's another reason to get multiple letters of support from your community, multiple Memorandum of Understanding from your collaborators, because that's another thing that a lot of grantors want to see. They want to see that they're supporting more than one entity. It makes their money go further.
Okay.
And there's also the idea that the more people that are involved, the more organizations that are involved, the more you can possibly accomplish.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
That's good to know. Okay, so what would the next... Bless you.
Thank you.
What would the next step be on this?
So we've talked about building the grant levels up. We've talked about exploring your timeline. So really the next step is to locate grants that fit what you want to do. Find those matches. And sometimes they exist and sometimes they don't. It's like right now I'm trying to find grants for a company that wants to do something that's very important, to provide clean water for the lithium extraction process that's going on in the Salton Sea. If we're going to have all electric cars, we need to start sourcing lithium from America. The Salton Sea has some of the most expansive reserves of fairly available lithium anywhere in the United States. So it's an amazing resource that our country can use to move things forward. But the Salton Sea is called the Salton Sea because it's an accidental lake. It was only created because the Colorado River broke through some earthworks when they were first trying to get water to all this arid area in Southern California. Little oopsie created the Salton Sea. It did also, it's a low spot that would fill in periodically with floods and everything. So there are Indian tribes that remember the Salton Sea expanding and contracting, expanding, contracting. But there's no natural inflow of water into it. So it got water into it, and then it's been concentrating all the salts and minerals and other things for all the years. So the lithium extraction process needs clean water. There's a company that might be able to provide clean, desalinated water, not just for the lithium extraction process, but there's also a lot of agriculture around there, and people need water. Mm-hmm. And, if you're going to have all of these new things sharing that water, you need to be able to clean it, and you need to be able to share it. You need to be able to source fresh water. And they've got a really cool process, but finding a grant for a for-profit company that is not a municipal water utility and that doesn't have connections to municipal water facilities, I can't find it. I can't find a grant just for them to build their prototype yet. I'm still working on it, but that's another thing to consider. Sometimes you might have to wait for the right grant to come up and be available, especially if you're doing something that not a lot of people either want done or not a lot of people are doing. Mm-hmm. If you're in a very niche business or niche nonprofit, and nobody is out there saying, hey, I've got this pot of money and I want to give it to your type of business, you might have to wait a while. But the other nice thing is there are so many more grant systems. I just found another one the other day. So 2 I wanted to mention for small businesses, and especially small businesses for women and women of color. There's one that's called Hello Alice.
Oh, I'm tied in with that website.
You've heard of
yeah.
Hello Alice? Okay, so there's that one. And then there's one called the Galaxy of Stars. And both these, Hello Alice and the Galaxy of Stars, they have a program that you can apply to not only for money, but for mentoring as well. Mm-hmm. And that's something I highly recommend when you're starting a new business, is get yourself a mentor. I actually was mentored through the Small Business Development Corporation. That's a nonprofit that exists just to help people start small businesses. And I was lucky enough that literally across the street from where I live is a SBDC location. So I just walked across the street and they set me up with a mentor. He's an amazing guy who's been in business for like 60 years. He's a 80-year-old guy with a great British accent. I love talking to him just to hear him talk. But he also has amazing advice because he had been in business so long. He helped me not start a business with the wrong person. I actually, when I was first starting to write grants, I was starting to write grants for a person that was going to pay me a really small amount and put me into a very strict contract. And I just started feeling like, oh, this does not feel right. This grant is much bigger and will take much longer than the amount of money they're willing to pay. And this contract ties my hands 6 ways from Sunday. And so I talked to my mentor about it, and he said, no, I would not go into that contract. If the person that wants you to sign this contract will not modify it, tell them no. And I did. And then I started my own business.
There you go. I love that.
So having a mentor, what is the quote? A smart person learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from somebody else's. Mm-hmm. So I believe in getting yourself a mentor so you can have that wisdom and not have to make the same mistakes again that somebody else has already learned from.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I've seen a lot of people even when I would explain to them, I made that mistake already, you should take my advice. They just
They're still going.
automatically did it for that fact. Because they were like, I'll prove you wrong, and they just completely fell on their face.
Well,
there's a lot of people like that.
do you want to know why?
Why?
We figured it out. So there's a great lady called Carol Dweck, and she has she's a PhD psychologist, and she has studied mindset. So you have a continuum of mindsets, and that continuum can exist within the same person. And they're sort of, if you want to start out with the simplest idea of mindset, you have fixed mindset, which basically means you have told yourself that your mind, your talents, and your skills are limited. You've set your own limits. I'm not good at math. I can't do gymnastics. I could never learn to play a musical instrument. Those are examples of fixed mindset phrases that every one of us has had that kind of thought run through our mind. But if you have a growth mindset, then you believe that your mind, your talents, even your personality are things that you can change and grow and improve on throughout your entire life. You can be 99 years old and you can learn something new. Come to find out, both of those can become self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, anytime you're trying to build something, it requires more work to go up than to stay the same or go down. But with a growth mindset, you feel more like putting effort into things because you know the effort you put in will create mental gains coming out. You'll either get more skills, you'll get smarter, you'll learn how not to make the same mistakes. When somebody gives you advice, you want people to give you advice when you have a growth mindset because you believe you can get to any place where anybody else has gotten to. Now, when you have a fixed mindset and you've said, I'm stuck right about here, then when somebody gives you advice and they're saying, well, you could get to here if you want, you say, well, no, I can't get there. And if I try that, I'm just going to fail and look bad. So I'm going to completely ignore you and keep doing it the way I always did it because I have already told myself that this is it. I can't get to where you're telling me I can get because I'm stuck here. Now, we don't actually say that to ourselves, but that's what those fixed mindset phrases do to us. They create barriers and they create basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. Look, I can't do this. Here, I'll show you. I'm going to show you that I can't do this. Oh, look, I failed. See, I told you I couldn't do that. Why did you make me look bad? Now I'm angry at you because you told me to push myself when I told myself that I was not capable of that.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So whenever you get a talk to the hand, when you're, when you're actually trying to help someone, they're not really reacting to you. They're reacting to what they've told themselves inside their own head. And I think it actually makes it easier to deal with difficult people because I think a lot of people are difficult, are reactionary, are hard to help because they've already told themselves they can't do it. They've decided
that they cannot.
There's
this
no
is where
use.
they're at, and
well,
this
in this particular thing, though, these people have a different mindset where they think they were going to be the biggest and best and everything, right?
Well, you don't have to have a low opinion of yourself to have a fixed mindset. There are actually great examples throughout history, and one might say in our current time, of people who have such a high opinion of themselves. The historical example is Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great's mom told him every day of his life that he was a god. And he believed her. I am a god. So I will go out and I will conquer the world. It gave him great permission to just go and conquer all the lands. Then he got to India and he found opium. And opium conquered him. I don't know if many people know that, but, Alexander the Great died in an opium den in India.
No way.
When the environment changed, he was amazing. He had the highest opinion of himself that he possibly could, and it worked for a while. But when the environment changed and he needed to change, it wasn't possible.
He couldn't do it.
That is crazy.
Because he
And
was-
Alexander the Great was conquered by his inability to change when the environment changed.
And these people that I'm talking about was conquered by by power, because the power was more important to them than anything, and they lost all their businesses. So that's kind of crazy that you say that. So you're saying when they reach a different environment that they're not used to, something else can conquer them because they're not used to being in that environment, like having
or
more
even
money,
like struggles, right? Or
Well,
just
when they hit failure,
Yeah.
when you have a fixed mindset, failure is a very scary thing, because failure proves you're not as good as you said you were.
There you go.
And so you want to hide the failure. You don't want to learn from it. As soon as something fails, you want to put it behind you. You want to forget about it.
You want to run away.
You want to hide it, bury it, put the big rock on top of it, and make sure nobody ever talks about it ever again. But then you keep failing in the exact same way, because you can never, because failure can't happen. And I think that's exacerbated by the American idea of the rugged individual, that everybody has to do everything entirely on their own, never make mistakes, and if you do make mistakes, don't make them in front of other people, and if you do make them in front of other people, deny the fact that it was ever a mistake to begin with.
Yeah, I've
See,
seen
I
that.
don't believe in that.
Crazy.
I think you should get out there. You should make mistakes, mess up, enjoy your life, figure things out. You know, it's
And
okay.
There is your growth mindset.
Yeah, and
You didn't know that's what you had,
Yeah,
but that's what keeps you going, and I think it keeps you happier.
yeah.
Because
I'm very happy.
there's I think one of the best indications that you're saying something to yourself that's fixed is anxiety. You know, when you start feeling anxiety, you feel trapped. And what are a lot of people trapped by? They're trapped by their own minds.
Yeah.
They're trapped because they told themselves they were trapped. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't change this. I can't change that. And then the world changes. You know, we've just been through COVID, where the entire freaking world changed. All the rules changed. And some people just went completely batty because the ability to quickly adapt to changing environments works much better if you say, I'm capable of this. No matter what the world throws at me, I might not get it right the first time, but I'll keep trying because I know I can get past this. That's the other thing that shows you have a growth mindset, is when you hit trouble, you don't shrink from it. You don't get fearful. You don't get anxious.
you run straight into it, and you're like, I'm gonna figure
you go
this
into
out.
troubleshooting mode.
Yeah.
Because you know you can
love
get
that.
past it. You start looking for ways to get past it. I hit this wall, but I know this wall isn't permanent for me. So let me get a ladder and climb over it. Let me get a shovel and dig under it. Let me get my friends together. We'll form a human pyramid, and we will climb over it together.
But it's sad because not a lot of people think that way. You know, they just
I think we need more people to think that way. And I think if we start making these things explicit. So one of the things you said brought me back to, I teach a workshop in this at Chaffee College. I teach a workshop, and one of the final points that I make to them is, what do people want? What are people chasing? What is the majority of human beings, especially in our American society, seem to be chasing? And I think a lot of people come up with, they're chasing money, or they're chasing power, or they're chasing fame. Why are they chasing those things?
because they think it's gonna make them happy.
Well, it's the idea of free will. What is free will? Free will is the idea that if I set my mind to something, I can accomplish it. Well, if you have money, it's easy. If I have money, I can pay you to accomplish that thing that's in my mind. If I have power, I can order you to accomplish that thing that's in my mind. If I have fame, well, I'm famous. You'll just want to help me do that thing because I'm famous and you want to be around me. So people want money and power and fame because they think it will get them this feeling of free will. But like you said, just money, just power, and just fame can be hollow. And we've all seen examples of people with massive amounts of money and power and fame go
And be depressed and hate their life.
right.
Like people that win the
their life
lottery,
are
they end up, they win millions of dollars, and they end up unhoused and homeless, and lose their whole family and everything.
Yeah,
You know, 'cause
or
it
they
doesn't
don't pay their
change.
taxes on it, and the IRS goes shunk and all that. So
I feel like a lot of people like are not even certain situations. Like I feel like in a sense, if you're a believer in God, I believe a lot of people don't get blessed because they would do terrible things with the money or they would blow it. They don't. It's almost like they're not blessed with it on purpose. Like even me, for instance, I believe that I got to a certain level in my business and I kind of stopped. I was kind of going out drinking, doing things, and I realized what I was doing wasn't benefiting me, my family, or my business. So I decided to stop, and I have a different mindset, a different way I think, and things are starting to just go like this for me, and it just doesn't. It's almost like unstoppable. Like I don't even have control. It just keeps going up.
well, and that's the idea, if we are all perfect creations and God has no limitation, why would he put limitations on us? So I think humans are only limited by humans. I definitely don't think God has put limitations on our capability to do good. Though of course there needs to be limitations on our capability to do bad, because again, order versus chaos.
Yeah.
That's really the way we divide good and evil. Things are good if they keep things peaceful, if they keep things orderly, if they keep them functioning. And things that we call evil is where there's disruption in function and disruption in peace and disruption in equity and fairness. So but the final thing about growth mindset is, you can chase money and power and fame for this feeling of free will, or you can truly build a strong sense of free will with having growth mindset, because as you build up little win after little win, as you learn from your failures and you don't keep making the same mistake again and again, you are building that feeling of free will. You are building that feeling that what I set my mind to, I can accomplish, because you just keep adding up more and more instances where you're proving it to yourself that is the case. But you can only do that if you start with the belief that you are unlimited.
And the thing is too, if you lose all that money, power, and fame, then who are you? But if that didn't matter to you, and that just happened because for the simple fact is you're trying to build something strong, and that meant literally nothing to you, then if you lost all that, it wouldn't matter because you're still building. You could still rebuild. You could still do different things.
And that's the other thing.
Hurt you.
That's the other thing about growth mindset. Instead of focusing on the destination, the way you also build growth mindset is you focus on the process. It's the process that's important. So then when you hit failure, you can go back to the processes that worked to get you to that point, and you don't have to start from zero.
And that's what we were just talking about the last few days is, when things don't go the way we planned them to go, and things kind of like, it'll hurt you a little bit, right? But I was telling you, this is just part of the journey. Like, enjoy it. Because, if you really think about it, too, all the movies are made out of the journey. The destination is not the moment of where all the things that built you for that.
Otherwise, movies would be really short.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the beginning credits. Here's them getting the gold or the girl or everything at the end, and the movie is like 10 seconds long.
Exactly.
So every movie is a journey.
Yeah, the journey is the best thing, and if you live in the moments of the journey, it's a lot better instead of just thinking about it later at the end. Like, man, I wish I would have enjoyed that more. I wish I would have lived in that moment. And I try to do that a lot with my life now. I live in the moment.
Absolutely, and you come out of it with more. If the
Exactly.
only thing you're focusing on is the goal or the win or the good feeling at the end, not only is the process just going to be a horrible slog,
And
you're going to
long,
forget. You're going to forget some of the things that got you to that win.
Yeah,
But
and
if
you'll
you-
miss out on a lot of learning too.
Yeah.
Going through that. Yeah.
And at the same time, I think that you just what did you have to do to get to that point? Then, if you're really pushing so hard, they could have made so many wrong turns and mistakes and just burning people because they needed to get to that win.
Right.
But if you enjoy the
Winning
process
at all
of the journey-
costs.
exactly.
It only makes sense if winning is the only thing you're focused on. But that's the other thing about when you have a growth mindset, you look to others who have been more successful, and you want to have those people around you as mentors and people to teach you how to get there faster. But if you have a fixed mindset and you have more successful people around you, then all you want to do is cut them down so you look like the best person in the room, or you want to take what they have because you don't think you can build it. Like I said, I think a lot of the worst parts of human behavior actually happen because of what's going on inside each person's head, and the self-destroying things, anxiety, depression. I think those things are much more likely when you yourself are saying to yourself inside your own head, I can't. This isn't possible. I've got nowhere to go,
Yeah, and I think too, like, I mean, exactly, when you try to take, you think you're trying to take from that person instead of like learning from them, or like you two, right? You guys coming around and coming on the podcast. It's exciting for me in a sense, right? Where I want your guys' energy and your guys' knowledge to rub off on me. So it's like you said, bringing the pack together and learning from each other and just building off of that. So when you have people like you guys come in, I've already interviewed both of you guys. We've talked, we've done stuff. When you guys come in, it's like, all right, I know whatever they got going on I'm gonna feed off of that. And instead of thinking, what can I get from this person? What can I, you know what I mean? That's not the way to think.
Yeah, it's one of the books that influenced me the most is one that was out of Los Alamos National Laboratory. It's where they built the bomb. So it has that history of not very nice history. But after that, they created the Santa Fe Institute, and they're studying the study of complexity itself. So, human beings have created all these systems, and there are emergent properties that come out of these systems, and there's new things you learn when you study complex systems. And one of the neatest things that I read about in that book is, for the longest time, our economics were what we focused on the most was just zero-sum game. If my business wins, another business has to lose. And so I have to be the only one winning, and everybody else has to lose. And if I'm not winning, then there's something absolutely wrong if I'm not the best. But one of these scientists in the Santa Fe Institute started saying, I don't think that's right. And he created, instead of the law of decreasing returns, which is what most of our economies up to this point have been based on, the more competition you have, the worse everybody does. He started studying the law and creating the law of increasing returns. So what that applied to is places like Silicon Valley. That place is successful, and it attracts successful businesses because once you get all those successful businesses in there, you create these synergies. You create these thought processes and think tanks and just people being in the presence of other ideas in that same realm. It made all those businesses do better. So that's the thing I'm hoping that our society is starting to figure out. It's like, we don't have, the Earth's resources are limited. We have to accept that fact. But the resources of human innovation are unlimited. And now we're really going to start spiking that curve on this with AI and machine learning, because AI and machine learning takes what we've already learned, and it's like, oh, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it can quickly find all these pieces of human innovation and put them together in a cogent way that would take a human being a longer time to do. So if we think that technology has been spinning out fast now, we haven't seen anything yet. We are really in a place where innovation can take us anywhere. But again, where are our ethics going to come in? Where are our rules and regulations going to come in? How are we going to protect people from the darker sides of these technologies? That part we're still figuring out. But if anybody wants to slow down this ride, I think it's way too late.
For sure. But we can I mean, that'd be great, definitely, to have it, in a sense, like House Over Baz be that think tank. Like, bring people in and just innovate things. We bring in so many different entrepreneurs, so many different minds. It's kind of blowing my mind. You know what I mean? All these different people we bring in. There's a lot we can do.
And that's the power of America. You know, all these people that think America should be about decreasing diversity, they don't get it. America is powerful because we have this diversity. If you have one thought, one mind, one type of way of thinking about things, you get one product.
Exactly.
And the environment changes, that product becomes obsolete. Now what do you do? But the power of America has always been people coming here from countries. There is a struggle when you're starting anew in a new place. But America was a place where that struggle had a place to go. People come together, innovate, build new ideas. You know, one of the people I'm writing grants for, these are folks that came from Mexico, started working in a recycling plant. That recycling plant went under, but they decided to, they had saved up their money, they got investors, they bought the recycling plant, and now they are the cleanest, nicest, most organized recycling plant, and they're right here in Fontana.
No way.
And they actually have the best prices, but people are creatures of habit. People are still going to the old, nasty, dirty place because that's where they've always went. It's like, look, there's a new, clean place that actually gives you more money for recycling. But, those folks were part of the American dream. They worked bloody hard their whole lives, and they saved up their money, and now they've got this amazing business that they built with their own hands. And, that's what you can do here. And we're not full. We're not overcrowded. We need folks to keep coming in, to keep our businesses going, to keep building things and keep making things and that sort of thing. So this idea that America needs to stop welcoming immigrants, I don't see where they're going with that because that is America. We are a country of immigrants. We are a country of diversity. And if you put limits on that, then it becomes, the side that's trying to do that. They have all these doom scenarios and talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start limiting what the definition of America is, if you start limiting who can be a part of America, then all those prophecies of doom that they have, well, yeah, they're gonna come true.
I mean, well, even look at us right here. We're all different nationalities. All of us, not the same at all, right? We're not the same nationality, and we're all here talking and having a conversation, meeting the minds of different things, of starting the nonprofit and business. And why would I need to speak to another me? I'm already me. Why not speak to people that don't even think like me, but at the same mindset in a sense, but you guys have complete different ways of doing things. That's how you build. That's how you become greater. I'm not going to become greater speaking to the exact same person I am. I'm not going to become greater.
Yeah, a monoculture only can survive if the environment doesn't change. That's what you learn from biology. That's what you learn from evolutionary biology. Even something that's perfect in one environment, if that environment shifts, then it's not perfect anymore. I mean, mammoths. Mammoths were these huge, amazing beasts. Long tusks, fur, not much could take them down. But humans then came on the scene, wiped them out, and probably less than 100,000 years, and they had existed for millions. You know, the dinosaurs thought they were great. Dinosaurs existed for hundreds of millions of years. Humans have only really been around as humans for about 5 million. So dinosaurs had us by hundreds of times over how long they persisted. But one big rock, and that environment changed so much that basically nothing could adapt, except tiny little furry critters who could burrow under the sand and live there for a while. And that's how we came to be.
I didn't even realize what time it was. We're an hour and 40 minutes in. We'll go ahead and I appreciate you coming on. We can actually get the next one rolling. We'll get that next one set up. We'll get that one rolling.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to say, what do you think about this? I really
no,
wanted
my mind
you to meet
is
her.
like, oh gosh,
I know.
You don't even know.
I know.
I'm ready to start working and running and making some stuff happen. So
Let's do it.
I'm ready to do this for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can just start building. You know, you start small, but it doesn't have to be really small. You know, $1,000, $5,000. You can start doing some significant stuff with that. At the very least, you can, take care of volunteers' meals. You can, organize get-togethers and start people talking about what you want to do. Start talking and getting volunteers. And
You got to start somewhere, right?
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, let's get this ball rolling.
I know there was one question that Shadi wanted me to ask. Shadi, what was that question you wanted me to ask about the nonprofit?
I already have a nonprofit, and we're trying to get a fictitious name and everything. Does it help what city we're in? Does it matter to get a grant?
I think, I wouldn't move cities to get a better grant environment, because you can always get county, federal, and state grants. And the grants that cities give, the biggest grant I've seen out of cities is, tens of thousands of dollars. So, I wouldn't change where your business was located for that much money. Now, if one city happened to be giving out $1 million grants, well, then they might get an influx of businesses that way. But I haven't heard of that city yet. So yeah, stay where you're most comfortable, stay where you know the most people. I think networking is a fundamental part of making any nonprofit or any for-profit business profitable. I'm a member of a networking organization, the Team Network. And it's all about referring who you know and referring everybody you know to everybody else you know. And again, community creates strength.
Yeah.
So if you've been a member of this community for a long time, people know you, they know what you're doing with your nonprofit, then, you'd be giving up a lot for a little to move someplace else.
Well, we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Summer.
Yeah.
We've got to keep talking because I want to tell you about my nonprofit or my dream business that I want to set up too.
Okay,
We definitely have to keep doing that. Can you look at the camera and say, "Shed the sheep"? Shed the sheep, our slogan.
Shed the sheep.
We thank you for coming on. We will obviously have you back. And so I just wanted to say, don't forget to like and subscribe. How's Over Baz. I'm Jacob Casas.
I'm Jessica Q.
And we are out. Shed the sheep.
Bye.